Brakken, you were late this morning.
It was.
4 minutes. Do you know what my rule is?
Was it 4?
Yes. 10:34 is when you arrived.
All right. I'm bookmarking this for at the end of this current line of conversation to pick it back up. So continue.
You can just pick it up right now.
No. What's your rule?
Well, in the gym, when clients are late, for every 1 minute they're late, it's 10 burpees before we can start our workout.
Excellent.
And sometimes clients are 10 minutes late. What do you do with that?
You got to get them done.
Just kidding. I don't make them do that. But I always want to make them do that. Like, you son of a gun. Like, I sat here and waited for you. What's a fair punishment for being late?
I think them having to pay for the time you spend sitting there.
Exactly.
You're on the clock. Take it.
I know. I actually thank them when they walk in late and I say, hey, thanks for the paid break, loser. So I don't mind.
Yep, exactly.
That's not what I was going to ask you to start this thing, though.
Okay.
Well, here, finish. You said you wanted to bookmark this. Now go ahead.
So Lisa, this is going to sound like a very complicated excuse, and it is, and it isn't. Lisa looked at my watch this morning and said, your watch is 2 minutes off again. And this highlights the second biggest flaw with this Coros Pace 3 that I have. I love the watch, by the way. When I first got it, I talked about that it's good, but it's a little quirky compared to coming from the Garmin ecosystem where I've been for a long time. I've had Forerunners and the Phoenix for, over it probably 13 years now since I had my first real Forerunner. And this is my first I had TomTom for a bit as well, I suppose, when they were sponsoring Spartan Race. But there's two issues with this Coros Pace 3. The first is that it has a bezel here, not even a bezel, sorry, a spin dial. And it's how you rotate through all the screens on the watch, and it's awesome because it's so much faster than clicking down or up each time. But there's no way yet to lock it during a run. And so if it's on your left hand, if you're wearing a glove, so anytime you're running winter, or if you have a sleeve over the top of it, it trips it constantly. So you can lock the screen so it can't do anything, but it still gives you a little vibration, a little haptic feedback every time it gets tripped. So it sounds like you might be pausing your watch. So it's incredibly annoying for winter running because you have to constantly stop and make sure you didn't, because you know you're not pausing your watch, but it keeps having the same haptic feedback like you might have.
Yep.
But then the second issue is that the clock doesn't stay up to date when it's like in standby or sleep mode. Like when the watch face turns off and the backlight's not on, but you can still see your watch, it'll be a minute or two, up to 2.5 minutes off. And then I'll touch that scroll button and it'll catch up. And it's terrible. And I didn't know that was a thing until about a week or two ago that it was doing that.
So you were only 2 minutes late in your mind today.
In my mind, I was about a minute because it was like 2.5 minutes off. So up till a minute 59, it still looks like, oh, it just turned 10:31 and I was in the bathroom for full disclosure. I'm like, oh, this is going to be fine. But I was 2.5 minutes past that. And then it was 4 minutes.
I hate to buy that excuse, but when you flashed me your watch, it was 10:43. I looked, and your watch said 10:42. So your watch
was annoying.
Your watch was a minute behind what my readings on my computer, phone, and watch were all saying. So that's almost, isn't a watch like its first function is to give you the exact time?
The exact time. And it's terrible because it knows it. It almost needs to be refreshed. I've never had a watch that you have to hit refresh, but I have to just hit a button or wake the screen and then it will go. It's really, really bizarre. And they can fix that with a software update. But they need to fix that because this is getting to the point where I don't wear this to the track now with Braden on race days because I need to know to the minute. There's two styles of racing. There is time schedule and then there's ready to race. Ready to race is just when the last race finishes, the next race starts. So you have to just be on it. And the others are that they're holding the time schedule no matter what, and they'll announce if they're delayed. So on that one, you need to always know exactly what time it is. And if you're 2 minutes off, there's been times where I think I'm good and then I'm 2 minutes off. So I wear my old Garmin on days I need to know the time. And this watch where I want the GPS, that is a dumb first world problem to have.
It's a dumb problem to have, first, second, or third world problem. A watch that
It's a
doesn't
watch.
tell time correctly. Coros, get it together. This is not a good advertisement for Coros.
It's not. And I want to love the watch.
Mm.
Everything else about it, I love on this watch, except for those two things.
You ready for my question?
Yep.
Okay, my question was,
I said it was going to be a convoluted excuse.
well, it's actually pretty understandable. And I saw it. I hate that I saw it because it's not wrong. I saw that your watch was actually behind the real time, which is bizarre. So, when you are hitting peak fitness, let's say you
Mhm.
want to peak September and October. You have two big races to end your year, and they're 6 weeks apart. Do you think that phase, like you want to nail both of them 6 weeks apart, are you really maintaining between races, or are you attempting to peak for both? Because I made a post yesterday about how I think every year should have like two builds, two maintenance phases. And by maintenance, I actually meant like peak racing phases and then a regression or a deload, right? Rinse and repeat. Like, let's
Mhm.
say roughly a 5 to 7 month cycle. I think there should be two down periods, two builds, and two like focused racing peaks. But really, you're building to a peak level of fitness and then keeping it there as long as you can before again resetting. So I like to look at the peak phase or the races that matter phase, like you're trying to get yourself into a like a peak maintenance phase, so to speak. But I think we're trying to maintain a level of racing more
Yeah.
than necessarily trying to peak for 6 weeks. I just was curious as to your thoughts there.
This is an interesting one and one that we as coaches do deal with a lot.
Yeah.
And my current, I say current understanding of it, because if you would have asked me 5 years ago, it'd be a different story. And 10 years ago, for sure, a different story. And probably 5 years in the future, hopefully it's a different story again. But I currently believe that if it is a race centered around lactate thresholds, let's just say 45 to, let's extend it all the way up to 90 minutes. Let's
Okay.
just go crazy. 40 to 90 minutes of racing.
So
That in
most
those
people
6
at
weeks,
10K and above for most.
10K to just under half marathon.
Yeah.
10K to half marathon, let's call it. I believe in those 6 weeks, you can actually get better or return up to where you were doing the same thing. Like you can push your lactate threshold back up pretty quickly. It atrophies a little bit when you go highly anaerobic in training, like people might do when they sharpen up for a race,
Mhm.
or when you do too much long training, it might drop a little bit, but you can bring that back up in just a few weeks. Whether you're tired or beat up, you can still work on that system. So I think that's the easiest race distance to race twice in 6 weeks at your max capacity,
Mhm.
somewhere around an hour. Maybe not the easiest one, but the simplest one. Certainly not easy. But if you go below that, it's highly anaerobic. And then you're balancing a lot of factors to try to be sharp and rested and really
Mhm.
fast at the same time. And you almost do have to change systems for a little bit before you go back to it, unless you're trying to maintain for 6 full weeks, which is tough to do. And if you're anything longer than a half marathon, you're balancing the huge demands of recovery because you've been beaten up in the marathon. And then, yeah, you're kind of just like playing that, can I recover and then do something sharp game? But the simplest one is that hour of racing. You can get back to doing right what you were doing because you don't have huge pounding, but you don't have huge anaerobic um, like gashes into your threshold, if that makes any sense.
It makes kind of sense. Uh, I think not that racing is easy. Any distance, if it's raced well, is the furthest from easy, whether it's a 400 meters or a 40 miler. But
Mhm.
I will say you are much more likely to get a guaranteed outcome when your race requires threshold running for the majority of it because your
Mhm.
fitness always rises to the top. The miscalculations are less likely. You're going to be able to uncover the work and your fitness by the time you get to the end half marathon, whether you went out too hard or too easy or just right. It's probably going to shake itself out within the realm of within the waters of your fitness that you have. Whereas if you start
Yeah.
racing down shorter to like the 5K or a mile or even longer, like the 50K or the marathon, the miscalculations become much more likely, and there's no time to recover, or there's no time to make it up in a shorter race. And in a longer race, once the writing's on the wall, it's just staunching the bleeding. So I agree with you. And not that racing, let's say 40 minutes to an hour and a half is easy, but usually, let's call it, the fitness cream rises to the top in those race distances where you're going to find out, and it's less likely you're going to misfire. That's how I feel about those races.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I
what I
agree
was
with that.
asking is, when you get into peak phase, you have races you care about, I look at it as maintain. I work towards these races, and then my sole mission is to maintain what I have built during racing season and not let it erode. Right? I'm
Mhm.
not trying to build and let the races maybe bump my fitness up a notch or two, maybe. But the rest, the point at this time is to let's just become available. I've built,
Yeah.
worked through fatigued, and now I'm just trying to maintain what I've worked so hard to have. Maybe I'll level up a notch or two because of racing and little sharpening workouts. But peak phase to me is kind of maintenance phase, especially if you're somebody who races a ton. At least that's how I look
Yep.
at it. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe that doesn't. I don't know.
No, I think you're right. I also think that with 6 weeks, if it's not right around that hour of duration race, you're kind of just picking what you're okay letting drop off a little bit. You almost have to pick your poison. I'm going to maintain everything the best I can, but in order to get something better and hang on for 6 weeks,
Mhm.
I have to be willing to let something slide. Whether that's the long run, whether that's full speed work, whether that's threshold work and going on speed, whatever it is, it's almost like something has to give, and you choose
Yep.
the lesser of the evils to let slide and go all in on whatever can balance that the best.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if you had thoughts about it, in particular, because we so often try to nail what we're going for, and then I'm going to peak in June, and I'm going to peak in August, and I'm going to peak again in September. And there
Yeah.
can be little bouts of freshening up, let's call it. But man, to try to do that 3 times, I don't know. I just don't know how
Yeah.
likely it is to happen. That's all.
Best case scenario is the first race is longer than the second race.
Yeah, that's fair.
Absolute best case.
Yeah,
Then you can do the classic sharpen down, and who cares if your endurance drops off a little?
yeah, yeah. As all the pros typically do throughout their seasons, which we talked about in last episode on Friday, which we got to hash it out.
That's right.
Should we talk about today's topic? What came to mind today for you? It was a listener question, I believe, maybe spawned this topic.
Yeah, we got a Q&A question that we didn't get to in the last episode, but it said, I've been training for a lot of 5Ks, but after listening to a bunch of episodes, I'm starting to think that training for a 10K might set me up for the best all-around fitness possible. And the question hit home to me because that was my general line of questioning for like a year coming out of college, trying to figure out OCR. Because for the people who might be new to this podcast, I really only raced longer than 1 mile one time, maybe 2 in 5 years of college, not counting my 1 year of cross country.
Mm-hmm.
So on the track, I ran longer than, 4.5 minutes on a blow up day. I ran longer than 4.5 minutes twice in 5 years of track racing. And
Mm-hmm.
so finding out how to train for OCR, which was the shortest race I ever did, was about 20 minutes. Was really, really difficult because everything we did in track was pace based. We always worked at a pace. You're running this time for these reps. We are running at 400 pace or 800 pace or mile pace or 3K pace. So coming over to the trails, I fought that battle of what pace should I be training at in order to be most ready for a race from 20 minutes to 3 hours. So that question I spent so much time thinking about that when it popped up, I thought, let's do a whole episode on it.
Well, first of all, that was one question of 20 that we haven't gotten to yet in the screenshots. So they are stacking up. We thought about doing another Q&A today because they just stack up. Maybe some feedback on whether you guys really enjoy the Q&A and we can keep throwing them in there as the questions stack up so we don't get so behind, or if you like us to save them and then knock them all out for one long run episode. I'd be curious as to feedback there. But this reminds me, we sort of did. You got a guy that's training for a 5K that then says, well, maybe if I bump up and train for the 10K, I'm more versatile. I have options to make. I can race down or race up. And we did an episode, what do you think, a year ago, when in doubt, race up or go longer, right? Train for your longest race
Mhm.
distance, and you can whittle down your fitness to something shorter. Then you just alluded to it in our preface conversation about hopefully your first race is longer and then your second race is shorter. So you can also whittle down from there. And I think it shares the sentiment of our episode we did like a year ago, like when in doubt, like train up, will we call it? I
Mhm.
have an interesting take on this question, actually, which you're not going to expect. But I guess
Okay.
well, before I start blabbing, um, I want you to give like your initial take to that question. Like, let's say if we were doing a Q&A, what your initial quick like answer would be, and then I will give mine, and then we can expand. I think that would be a good way to look at this.
I don't do quick answers well. I
Well,
will
I don't.
say
I
that
mean, like however long it takes, but not like an entire
yeah.
episode type answer.
Yeah, no, I get it. Cliff notes. In 2013, maybe 2013, maybe 2014. I don't remember. This those years all blend together. I was down in South Carolina. I mean, in Southern California. This is not a great start to this answer. Down in Temecula for back-to-back weekends of Spartan racing. And a bunch of the top people in the sport were there at the time. And I posed this basic question to several of them throughout the weekends, the 2 weekends. We were trying to figure out the sport at that time. There had been one world championship, maybe two, and people were starting to have prize money. We're starting to take it seriously, but we all had different backgrounds. So, of guests we've had on this podcast, the people I discussed it with that weekend would have been Ryan Kent, Hunter McIntyre, Matt Novakovic, and Chad Trammell. There may have been more people involved with it. My brother was as well, but I don't remember for sure outside of those five people: Macaulay, Ryan, Hunter, Matt, and Chad, who all have very different running backgrounds, but all have very high end running.
Elite group of
Chad, in
folks
fact, just took third place this past weekend at the U.S. Trail Marathon Championships
at the Berkey.
on the Birkebeiner course in
And
Wisconsin.
I considered going there. Actually, I had an athlete race the half
Yeah.
there. And Chad is what, 42,
Is he in his
43?
40s now?
Is he? I always assumed he was older than me because he'd been in the sport longer. But
I always
anyway,
assumed he was about the same age as me.
okay, maybe he is late 30s then. But anyways, pretty good result considering he's not 25 or 30 anymore,
Yeah.
regardless. Yeah. Chad, sorry about that. You have to let me know. Continue.
Yeah. So, I mean, this guy, Ryan Kent, was a child prodigy as a runner. He's talked
Mhm.
about that. Chad Trammell is a college runner and is just third place at the U.S. Marathon Trail Championships. Hunter McIntyre might be the fastest person at his weight on planet Earth. And Matt Novakovic is one of the better uphill runners I've ever seen in my life. And so I asked all of these people this, and the answers I got were 10K, 10 mile, 1 hour. And I don't remember what Matt Novakovic said. It was probably something like 2 hours at 40% incline,
And what was the
something like that.
exact
But
question posed?
like, if you could be in shape for one race, if you had to train and do the majority of your speed work and training around being ready for one distance race, what would set you up the best to be the most well-rounded at all distances? And the answers were 10K, 10 mile, and 1 hour. And I
Mhm.
find that to be a very accurate yet widespread answer
Yeah. Okay.
from an elite perspective.
So that's your Cliff Notes answer to the question is
Yeah, I would say
summarizing.
convert that to time,
Okay.
which for these athletes was between 30 minutes and 60 minutes.
Mhm.
And somewhere in that range is the ideal distance to prepare for to allow you to race all the way down to 1 mile and all the way up to a marathon.
I'm debating on two directions to take this, which are neither of those. Okay,
Well,
let
give
me
me the curveball, the one I didn't
can I just
expect.
rattle the cage a little bit? So,
Yes.
what do you think the percentage listening to this podcast, the contingency of pure runners? What do you think at this point? Because what happened, folks, is we started a run centric podcast. We'll be 5 years in January, which is mind
Hmm.
blowing. But we started heavy emphasis and personal bias on OCR, which is predominantly running with some cute stuff in the middle, let's call it. and we took our OCR followers over, and I think our contingency was largely OCR to start, but our podcast got traction, and we started getting noticed by real runners, and we have a good pure runner listener base, which is our goal anyways, right? So before I answer, I'm setting myself up here. Do you think we have 50% of our listeners are pure runners or more at this point? My guess would be yes.
I think my guess would be 60-40 runners versus OCR athletes.
And it
or
used to
hybrid
be
athletes.
maybe what, 80-20 to start? 90-10 when we first started?
Start, it was probably 99-1.
Okay. So I have still never seen overall racing fitness increases like I have when I've decided to pursue two things. When I first found OCR, it forced a style of training on me that I was so unaccustomed to. And suddenly I went from 16:15 in the 5K to 15:40. And all I did was start training different and putting my body under these crazy demands, new stimulus after years of the same shit, right? So part of me wants to start going down that road. Train dynamic, maybe not worry about the time domain, the distance, and all that, but the what. And I know most of you listening are not going to go run OCR, and I may never again. A version of that could be hybrid. On the other side of the coin, the other thing which really leveled up my fitness is I started trying to run well on the trails. And then suddenly I developed a strength that I could translate to a flat 5K. I go take off in the trails and do purposeful work. And then suddenly my 5K leveled up as well, even though I'm not grinding on the roads every day, right? And so for some people who are stuck, a little bit of cage rattling may go a very long ways. Now, to caveat that, I have a run background. I spent my time on the roads and on the track where most listening didn't. So is that my unique circumstance, which is like, hey, Kirk, you've been doing the same thing for a while, so this is going to be good stimulus to improve your capacity. But what I'm getting at with all of this, and I'll bring it full circle, is that underneath it all, what was it, Brakken? I went from chasing road 5Ks to chasing 2-hour mountain races. I went further. I went from racing road 5Ks and an occasional 10K to trying to run an hour and a half trail race. And all I did was draw things out further. So pursuing another modality, if you're a road runner, absolutely could move your fitness needle, and it probably will. At the same time, if I really break it down, what did I do? I drew out my training longer, more grindy, threshold. I increased my durability and my stay power. And so to answer that question, I think racing and training for something further than a 5K will absolutely have you racing your best 5K if that is the example. And so very long-winded way of saying, I think 60-minute fitness, I think half marathon fitness, to echo everything you just said. I still agree with that based on all of that. I think somewhere in that range, 60, 75 minutes, whittle down, go longer. Beautiful. Was that too much? Did I get on like a little bit of a story soapbox there?
Your answer was shorter than mine.
Only because you stumbled over your words a little in the beginning.
Yeah. Well,
so what do you make of that?
I mean, you lead me into my main premise that I've come to over the years, which is that the first step is to decide, are you wanting to train the vast majority of your training at a specific race distance pace, or are you looking to train for one specific race type that will have you ready for everything? Because I believe if you're doing the former, give me what is the most important race pace to train at. First, you have to convert it to time so that you know what you're really dealing with. Because like if Ryan Kent says 10K or 10 mile, that's different than him saying it for someone who runs 9-minute pace. I mean, that kid ran in the 17s when he was single digits. I think when he was like 9, he ran like a 17 something 5K or whatever. So like that's a different level of running. But somewhere, if you wanted to give it time, I think around that 40 to 60 race distance, whatever race distance takes you that long, that might be 10K, that might be 10 mile, it might be 15K, something like that. I think that's the single most important race pace to spend the vast majority of your training intensity at.
I love that conversation.
But if there was one, okay, go ahead.
The specificity of, because I have a very strong thought on this as well through a recent experience training for my half marathon. And
Mhm.
like, if you were to decide, like, objectively, I don't care how long it takes you. Let's just even take that time domain out of the equation. Like, if you had to say, okay, 2 out of 3 workouts I choose are going to be at this pace, I would pick half marathon pace with one over
Okay.
or under. I think I would pick half marathon pace because I think I was the most confident on that training. Like, a 5K certainly didn't intimidate me. A 10K, I was licking my chops. I would say, if I had to say 2 out of 3, I'd go 2 out of 3. You weave in and out of half pace, and then probably for one more, you ratchet down, and you can choose how fast you'd like to go on that day. I'll stand on half
Okay.
marathon pace. What do you think? If you had to pick a distance, because I think 10K pace for those who race it well is pretty quick. I don't know if exposing yourself to that. Whereas
Yeah.
half marathon pace, what is it? I'm running threshold most of the time for these quality sessions. Then, duh, I'm just cheating the system, right? Kind of by
Yeah.
saying half pace.
I cannot run 10K pace for 2 out of 3 workouts all year round.
You'd be
I know that.
smoked.
I can make it months probably, maybe, but I can't do a year. But I think I would go one tick faster. For me personally, mine would be 15K pace.
Just split the difference.
That Yeah, split the difference directly. Half marathon is what? 21 point what? 1? Is that the
Okay.
precise? Oh, no. 23.1?
A half?
Wait,
No.
no, no. 42K
Yeah, just a
is a
marathon,
marathon,
yeah,
so
21.
21.
Yeah.
So 21K. So halfway between 10 and 21. Math is really not going nothing's going well for me today.
No, you look
My
good.
watch is off,
You look great.
stumbling over my words. Can't do math as usual. So that 21K distance and 10K is too fast. Yeah, I'm splitting it to 15K. That's 9 miles and change. And that's the speed I'm going to run for 2 out of every 3. I think that's me riding my line for 9 minute. I mean, I can't run 5 minute pace for 9 miles. So, and right now it'd be a little under 6. So it's right around that 1 hour race pace. That's about as close as I can get to 1 hour race pace.
Okay. I can't argue with that either. If I were to go any direction from half marathon pace, it would be down.
Down one.
Down, but I still think we had this conversation where on Friday where I was like, I just wish somebody told me to run slower or
Right.
sit, like if you had to make a decision, quit over speed training all the time and err on the side of like, let's call it threshold, which I didn't even know the term in
Yeah.
college, right? I think that's
Right.
where I'm sort of biased and I've seen success with that. So we've decided
Yeah.
somewhere between we can still say circling 1 hour race pace. Circle the
Yeah.
waters.
And I will be clear on why I want that one notch faster. And it's because it's a slightly different stride for me. The difference between my half marathon race stride and my 9 or 10 mile race stride is there's a little bit of a difference. It's a
Mhm.
little more aggressive, and I would want to spend some time in that slightly more aggressive stride. That's the only reason. It's not because of speed. It's not because I'd be worried that I'm not working hard enough. I can do that with my third workout, just like you said. It's that stride difference. It would just be, I think it'd be good for me.
I know what you mean about the stride difference. I was running a mile on, mile float session last week. In my float, I was roughly trying to be 45 seconds a mile faster than my on. So I was weaving like 5:15, 6 flat, 5:15, 6 flat, something like that, which becomes awfully painful. And I realized during it that my stride for 5:35 pace is the same as 5:15 pace. No difference for me at
Mhm.
all, which might be closer to 10K. At the same time, it's like once I hit like 5:10 to 5:05, there's like a notable switch of aggression almost that happens. And I think we all have that line where it's like, I can get away running half marathon pace and use that same mechanics all the way through maybe my 10K. But then for some reason, my switch is a little faster, where maybe you notice a difference maybe somewhere in that half marathon to 10K pace, like for example. But I found
Yeah.
mine was a little, but there's a notable difference. I made note of that during the session, which was interesting. It more had to do just with turnover for me, but the stride didn't
Yeah.
change until a certain pacing, which I found interesting to note. Um, what would you say I'm thinking through this, your stride difference pacing, like where are your thresholds between like I'm jogging, I'm aerobic threshold, like I'm all out, where would you say your pacing, like your gear shifts are?
A weakness and a strength of mine my entire life. It's a weakness in just running, and it's a strength in racing, is that my stride changes too much from pace to pace and too many
Mm,
times. So it changes a lot. Like when I'm dawdling to when I'm jogging, it's different. And when I'm jogging to where I'm running aerobic threshold, it's different. I probably have like 5 different points. So I'm a
mm,
bad person to ask, but it's like every, I would say 20 to 30 seconds, there's a change in my stride. And maybe visually it's not as dramatic as it feels to me, but it feels like I'm running someone like an entirely different stride, which is part of the reason why I think I always had a good kick and still do have a decent kick. It's because I get to use something I haven't been using. But it's also why I get dropped at metronome paces because I can't hold one
mm.
for very long.
I saw your stride change when we got together for man training running public weekend, and you went flying by me attempting to break 60 in your last quarter mile repeat. That was a stride change right there.
Yeah, and it shouldn't look that drastic, but it is, and it
Uh,
always has been for me.
in the last
You know
50
how Cole
meters, it should
Hocker
look
has a
different.
different stride
Yeah.
and Jakob Ingebrigtsen does not?
Mhm.
And as a result, if Cole's there at the end, he has a little extra. Not as a result, but maybe partially as a result.
Yeah.
But Jakob doesn't get dropped in metronome paces.
Yep.
That's exactly how I feel about my stride.
It's a good way to put it. Well, there is stride differences. I guess we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. I just found that interesting that you mentioned that, and then
Yes.
it was something I consciously was thinking about during my own session. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's help people here. So, well, so if you're designing a workout for yourself and you want to race, even if it is a 5K, or you want to race a marathon, but it's not for 6 months, right? You're in this stage of like, I don't race a marathon till April. It's September. I have a few things in between. What do I do with my training decisions? Well, here's your start, right? What pace, roughly, even if it's goal pace, not current pace, am I at for, let's say, somewhere between 10K and half marathon? I'm going to say half marathon. You're going to say an hour. And we start to center our training decisions around that. 1,000-meter
Yes.
repeats at roughly half marathon pace or 60-minute pace. You could do quarter mile on off at roughly your 1 hour race pace, weaving in and out. You could do a progression tempo for 30 minutes, which you could maybe race for 60 minutes, for example. So I think starting point one, especially if you don't know what's next, you have a myriad of things coming up next, just to make it crystal clear, base your decisions on that right now. You can always pivot one way or the other from center, and center should be, we've objectively just decided, somewhere around an hour to half marathon pace.
Yes. Yeah. I think you take a look at what you think you could run for all distances and you choose the pace that is closest to an hour. And then I have a sliding scale with that.
Okay.
The slower you are,
Yeah, muddy the waters a bit, Brakken. Muddy them up.
I, it's going to muddy it, but it's going to clear it a little at the same
Oh, the
time.
classic
Sometimes you have to do that.
clearing mud, the cleansing mud.
Yep.
Let me take a
Yep.
bath. All right.
And that is that the slower you are. So let's say that the world record holders, or just even an elite runner, roughly 1 hour race pace is half marathon pace.
Yeah.
And then for me, 1 hour race pace is closer to 10-mile pace. And for you, it's closer to probably what, 11-mile race pace?
Yeah, maybe even a little further if I'm having a good, no, yeah, if I'm having a
Yeah.
good day. Yeah.
So the further you are away from half marathon, like if 1 hour race pace for you is 5K pace or 8K pace or 10K pace, the further you are away from what the elite marathoner or the elite runners of the world would be, the more that you have permission to move down another notch. You move down to 45-minute race pace or
Sure.
50 because you want that stride benefit. And if you're running slow enough, it's when in doubt, run a little faster. But the faster you are, the closer you are to that being your half marathon pace, the more you want to make sure that you're not overreaching on these days. And you're going more of the Kirk route of I could do 10-mile pace or half marathon. I'm doing half marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Where the 1 hour 10K runner might say, I'm actually going to go down to 8K pace on these. That's my caveat.
I actually really like that caveat. I'm glad you clearly mudded those waters, because that's actually crystal clear. That's not mud at all. So, and I
Good.
agree with you. You know what I'm thinking is, I'm thinking through this. Like, a lot of people, you get the question, like when you create a workout or you prescribe a workout, or people who are self-coaching, which most of you out there probably are. Like how to just approach the session. Like, okay, I decided I'm going to do mile repeats today. Like, where do I start? What do I do? I'm going to do 6 by a mile with 2 minutes rest. That's what I've decided on. Okay, now what? Or I'm going to do my quarter mile repeats, or I'm going to do 3 minutes hard, 2 minutes easy, or it doesn't even matter. You get it. The idea, examples are endless. I still think when you start out, because this is how I approach it, is I roughly start those sessions like I'm going to do my first rep at roughly half pace. 520 to 530, let's call it. 525 is what I sort of consider it right now. It could be an 800-meter repeat. It could be a 2-mile repeat. It could be a 3-2 float workout. Guess where Kirk's probably starting? Somewhere around 525 pace. I'm going to feel out what my body's going to give me for the day and say, okay, this is right where I need to be, or okay, that was manageable. I can ratchet down. I even think, as blanket statement as it is, you could take that pacing, approximate pacing, if you don't know it exactly, and start there with 75% of your sessions, being like, I'm going to start about
Mhm.
here and see how it pans out. Would that be a waste of a 1 mile and mile repeats? Not at all. A mile repeat at half marathon pace is a very, very effective and sound pacing
Yeah.
strategy for a workout. What do you think about that? I'm just like trying to clear this up even more, being like, heck, I don't even care what the workout you're going to do is. You can
Yeah.
still use this as a guiding star for your, at least how to start the session.
Yeah, that 60-minute-ish race pace
Yeah.
effort is so great because you can't overcook a rep that way.
Right.
You're getting benefit out of it, but you're not gonna overcook it and blow your workout up. But you're also not gonna lose that much benefit on 1 rep by starting at that. Even if you needed to be at let's say you needed to be at 5K pace in this workout, and you did your first rep at 1-hour race pace. It's almost a wasted rep, but it's fast enough that it's preparing you for the next rep. And the beauty of doing 60-minute race pace is that if you want to ratchet things up a bit, you just really, really shorten your rest and get back to work again.
Right.
If you were doing, let's say you were doing 5 by mile at 5K and you ran the first one accidentally at 1-hour race pace, you'd be like, shoot, I missed it. I'm taking 30 seconds rest and I'm going again. And now I'm getting back to it. Suddenly that's a really difficult workout and
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be fine. Now, it's not the ideal way to do it, but it's way better than missing by 3 deviations down and starting at 1-mile race pace, and now you're done for the day. So it's a really safe place. Now, that's an extreme example.
But
No one's missing 5K by 3 deviations, but it would be safe.
somebody goes out at like 800-meter pace. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Um, but what I like about that, starting at half, I'll use 60-minute race pace, whatever. People can wrap their minds around that probably just as easy. Is so what? Let's say you're doing your mile repeats or your thousands with only 30 seconds rest, or your 3-2 float. Okay, so what? Add an extra rep at the end. Then you worked into it. You felt it out. You can always draw the workout out longer if you're like, I
Yeah.
still haven't gotten what I needed. As long as you're not in a time crunch, I still think I like that for many reasons. Coming back to center, not only should be the majority focus of your quality sessions, but then also like deciding where to start your quality sessions, even if the intention or you ratchet down to 5K pace. I don't think like 60-minute race pace is too many deviations away to consider it not productive. I agree with you there.
No. And if you're training for a small variety of races, 2 out of every 3 is at this. And then your third is to address the other things. And if you're training for a wide variety, well, maybe a wide variety, 2 out of every 3. If you're training for a small variety, 3 out of every 4 can be this. But as long as the majority of your work is here, you're really safe in your training, but you're not far off already running your best at the other distances. There's no magic in training, but if there was, training at that hour intensity gives you way more speed than it has any right to and way more endurance than it has any right to.
And I think there's one key word when you circle those waters for the majority of your decision, and that key word is availability. You generally
Mhm.
remain available to continue that training effort level for weeks and months on end, versus if you start swinging a little too fast, a little too often. Not that it's bad, you could hit a real nice peaking phase and then it could be done, for example. So I consider that like, if you're going to go back to center, it's a maintainable way to approach your quality sessions as well.
It
Availability.
is. When I first left college and got into the world of other running races and got a look at what was available to do out there and the success people were having, I used to be a fairly jealous athlete. I saw people doing things and I wanted that. I wanted their success. I wanted their accolades. I wanted their glory. I wanted their money. And I think part of the maturing process as an athlete is that I stopped being so jealous of others, especially of their times or their achievements or their glory. I still want their money. But the thing that I get jealous of now, every single time that I feel a pang of jealousy towards an athlete, do you know what it's about, Kirk?
No. What's it about?
It's consistency over time.
Mm.
Someone I look at and say, oh my goodness, they've been going for 3 straight years and look how strong they are now. Or
Mm.
that he just completed 9 straight months. He hasn't missed, looking at people's Strava, they haven't missed a week in 9 months. That's what I get jealous of now
Mm.
because I see the power with time and, hindsight and everything, the power of stringing things together over time. I used to get jealous of individual workouts or races, and now I'm jealous of the people that have found a way to be available for months and years at a time.
Yeah.
And what that oftentimes comes down to is choosing the workout that does not put you on the edge. And 1 hour race pace does not put you on the edge.
Yeah, and if it does, it would be at the very end of whatever session you've chosen, where you can
Yeah.
kind of leave it out there at the end, but you haven't had to change your life en route to get there on every rep preceding. And
Right.
yeah, I don't know another word to describe it. Yes, it's hard work, so we're not like poo-pooing the work it takes to run these workouts, but I still think availability, like I think you'd have a really
It's
hard
manageable.
manageable. I think you'd have a really hard time burning out. Granted, there's life and other things and stress that factors in, and burnout can happen at any
Yeah.
phase, even base phase, right? But
Right.
okay, so question for you to take
Mhm.
sort of the tangent is I started this conversation with saying the biggest fitness increases I saw were like I started OCR and I started trail
Yep.
racing. And really what it was drawing out the time I was training, really, when in doubt, go longer. And it improved my shorter distance racing without question. So then the two other, like if there are 3 sides to this coin, if that's such a thing, the first side would be, okay, we talked about race distance and circling the pacing waters.
Mhm.
Now, if you want to be good at everything, what about the terrain waters? I said that trail racing actually leveled up my road racing, or is it a proxy of the fact that I was going longer? I don't know, but I still feel like there's a time and place for hills, the trails,
Mhm.
even when flat racing is a priority, and vice versa. If you're a trail runner, I still want you going to the track if we can every so often to get in touch with turnover. So, like, if you were to say a formula for your best overall racing, would terrain be involved at all?
I think it would have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go with the same kind of prescription, which is 2 out of every 3. I'm going to call that a massive majority win. 2 out of 3, 66%, give or take, however much you want to give to that. 2 out of 3 or 3 out of every 4. I would say 2 out of every 3 would be trail or hill. Containing trails or hills to
If
some
you're a
extent. I
trail
think that
athlete.
if you're an athlete who wants to be able to do both, we're talking the best all-around race readiness.
Okay.
I think it takes 25 to 33% of your total runs done on pavement or track to be ready to race at over 90% of your capacity on those. I do not feel the same way about the trails. I do not think 25 to 33% of your runs can be done on the trails, on technicality, or in the mountains to be within 90% plus of your capability on those terrains.
Hmm.
So I would play my odds and say if I only need 33% of my time on the roads or 25%, I'll err on the side of caution. I'll give it a full 33% on the road and track, but the rest I'm going to do on the trails or off road or in the mountains. If you wanted to be able to race them all, that's how I would approach it.
And you're speaking exclusively to quality work more than anything?
Total volume.
Total volume. Okay. I think
You could look at it quality work, yes, but I'd rather look at it total volume.
okay. I go back and forth on this one.
And
Mostly,
caveat before you go into it,
Hmm?
there's a skill component here that you've put your time in and I put my time in.
Sure.
You're going to be able to probably do 10% of your total volume on the trails and be a trail monster. You've put your time in there. You need to brush up on that. But for just the general faceless person, this is what I'm talking to.
And then I want to like, not to complicate it more, but then bring the incline treadmill into the mix, because
Mhm.
there's a component. When I think trails, it's synonymous with hills for me. Like I don't go race and
Okay.
run trails that are flat. Technical is a very different story, I think, than hills. A lot of the stuff we have here can vary between friendly, runnable, and then very technical. But I'm going to just deviate one from you and say 50-50. Like in an ideal world, if you want to race the trails and the roads, I really like one clean run session a week. And then even if it's your long run, at least it's 2 hours or so, let's say, of work on the trails, which when you
Yeah.
start to add up the time spent, even though it was only one hit a week, but if it was your biggest and longest hit of the week, like there's just exposure there, right? Or a quality long run. Let's say I want to do my thousands at threshold pretty nice and clean on Tuesday, but then I go rip a 15, 10, 10, 5 on the trails on Saturday. But you're right. There's also a front load of trails where I spent most of my days on the trails and there wasn't a question
Mhm.
about it. And so I think you could find a way to jig the system there where maybe you could do a little bit of both. You access your clean running once, you keep a lot of your longer stuff maybe onto the trails. Um, but it's not far off from 66%. It's just what, 16% difference. That's not that much.
Yeah, and I can buy that as well. I mean, I just finished building out my off-season training plan for what I wanted it to be, and I'm
How
going
many
to, since
weeks
it's
is
the
it?
off season,
How many weeks?
oh, it's just taking me through the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
So what is that?
9.
14,
Oh yeah, we have 3 months. 13, 14 weeks. Yeah. 13.
something like
Yeah.
that. Maybe it's 15. I don't know. Anyway, it's just 2 quality staples per week and 1 midweek long run. Nothing that no one's ever done before, but the one is just clean. It's indoor on the treadmill. The other one's outdoor,
Yeah.
off road. That's just all, alternating between maybe something compromised and something hilly. Just it's 50-50 right there. And then my midweek long runs some will have vert, some will be on the treadmill at incline, some will be on the road, and just you have to be able to run for, you got to get to the point as a runner. I said my goal is to be well rounded, be able to do everything. Got to get to the point where I can run 10 to 12
Mm-hmm.
any given week on a Wednesday or Thursday on the road and not be so beat up that I'm not ready to rock again 2
Yep.
days later. So alternating where I do it, but that's closer to 50-50. That's closer to what you're talking about.
But you're not a faceless man.
I'm not a faceless man.
Yeah. Hairless man, but not a faceless man. Do you have any concrete things on your schedule right now, or is this sort of like I'm going to build and then I can pivot when I choose to? Because I think it's important for people to
I
have that
have
context. This is curiosity, but it's also like perspective. That's why I'm asking.
I have italicized things on next year's schedule.
Okay.
Races I'd like to be able to do, but I'm not training for any of them.
Yeah, you're building fitness. You're building the
This
foundation.
is an off season.
I'm in this interesting spot right now where I have a planned deload where I'm going to take a full week off the last week in October, about a month from now. So I have 4 weeks left of like training that matters without any, like I'm just training to get myself to like a vacation where I don't want to have to work out. It's my time. I'm going to be in the woods camping and I don't want to run. I'm taking 2 weeks a year. I take one in the spring and one in the fall. Everybody knows that at this point, I think. And so I have like this weird abyss right now where I'm like, I'm not going to race. What am I doing these next 4 weeks? And all I'm doing is half marathon pace work and the same thing like we're talking about. Like I'm going to go do like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 ladder tomorrow. And I'm going to start at half pace and I'm going to ratchet down if I feel like it. And all I'm going to do for these 4 weeks is exactly what we're recommending these listeners do, which is like starting at half 60-minute pace. I'm going to just maintain status quo here, get to my deload, and then build back up and decide on what's next. But like even me saying, hey, it's important for me to, I could even build fitness now, but I'm making the same decisions. The workouts are approachable.
Right.
I feel accomplished afterwards. I'm available. And I'm very unmotivated right now because I have no immediate races on the schedule. And what does my big build end with? A rest week after nothing, no race. And I'm still choosing this because it's just like sustainable. I don't have to put a lot of emotional and mental energy in this type of training to still be really, really fit. And if somebody said, Kirk, you idiot. Go race a half in 5 weeks. I'd be like, yeah, I can pivot right away and be ready for sure. Like somebody could drop and say,
Mhm.
I lost my Santa Shuffle registration. Do you want to go run my 10 miler for me? Be like, heck yeah, I can be ready for that. Give me 3 weeks and I'm going to feel ready to crush. And that's kind of what I like about using the 60-minute half marathon race pace for your centerpieces. Like, how far away are you from like a screw it, I'm going to race in 3 weeks and feel good about it? Like, not far at all,
Mhm.
right? How far out do you think you are from nailing a race if that's the style of training you're doing? Three to
I
5 weeks?
don't think you can be further than 6.
Right. And probably closer.
And it's 6 if it's a marathon or if it's like 5K or under,
Sure,
right?
sure.
You need those 6, maybe 8 for the pounding or for the top end speed, but you're 6 weeks away from running fast at anything, and it's probably more like 3 to 4.
Yeah. So in January, when something sparks your interest and you're like, you know
Right.
what? That italicized thing sounds real good right now.
Yeah.
Probably pretty ready for it.
So all that being said, this ready to race concept, I have never in my life been more ready to race more different types of races than when I was training for OCR. When specifically I was training for Spartan super and beast distances, which at that time, super was 8 to 10 miles plus, which is a foolish statement, but that's what it was called, 8 to 10 miles plus. You'd see it as short as probably 8 flat and as long as 11 and a half sometimes. And
Mhm.
then the beast distance was 13 to 15 miles. So when I was training for obstacle course racing, which needed to be, there were some courses with some flat, but mostly rolling, steep, or mountainous, and between 8 and 15 miles. That was when I was in the best overall running shape of my life. I wasn't necessarily the best at any one thing, but it's where my post collegiate mile PR came from. It's where my lifetime 5K PR came from. It's where my best treadmill challenge score came from. And it's when I was most comfortable jumping into long, fast trail races. The only thing I wasn't in my lifetime best for was mountain ultra work and 800 meters. I wasn't far off my lifetime mile best. I ran a 420 mile training for a Spartan Super, which is only 6 seconds off my lifetime best, which is an eternity
Uh-huh.
in running. But you talk that 4 to 6 weeks of sharpening, I probably don't wind up far off that. So it had me 1 mile to, I would call it 20-mile ready, training 8 mile to call it 13-mile emphasis with trails, mountains, and flats.
Well, yeah, and to stir the pot a little bit, that is exactly what I wanted to end with. I said bring it to terrain, and then the last thing was bring it to OCR, and you
Yep.
stepped in there. And so the curiosity then must be asked by the majority of our listeners is why? Like why would OCR training somehow get you in really good shape for everything? And I think the one word that comes to mind too is like durable. There is no
Yeah.
sport that requires you to be that durable. Hybrid, you could also argue durable, um, and tough. OCR puts you in a place where you can't get yourself in a road half sometimes. It's in a place in which you ask yourself at times, I don't know if I can. And you find a
Mhm.
way to do it. And I think the way OCR and hybrid can often change just your mentality is suddenly pure running seems approachable, more
Yes.
approachable than having 120 pounds of sand on your back going up a 30% grade on a double black diamond at altitude. Suddenly risking it, going out quick in your half marathon seems quite friendly compared to you literally
Mhm.
broken on the side of a mountain, unsure if you're going to be able to complete this task. And so I think that style of training, if done right, makes you durable, tough, stubborn. And I think there's a
Yeah.
translation that just suddenly makes you more aggressive with your running because it's just running then, not all the other
Right.
stuff. I think that's, and then of course the durability factor comes with the duration, meaning you're training for longer races, which then whittle down into nice shorter distance running. What do you
Yeah.
make? What do you make
I agree with that.
if you had to make some bullet points about the why?
Well, I think the durability is huge. What it does, what OCR, now OCR is kind of foolish in concept. and it is specifically to an outsider who's never done it. I can understand why people would look at that and say a Spartan race is dumb. And it is, but we loved it. And there was a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is that it took exposed and then through training and practice eliminated the classic runner weaknesses.
Right.
You cannot have a weak lower back, weak upper back, weak core, weak hips, weak ankles in OCR. It's required to be able to do the sandbag carry, the bucket carry, the log carries, the farmer's carries, the crawls, the power hiking, the hard descending, the technical running. You cannot be weak in those areas, and it forced us to overcome that. So then when we get back out on the roads, our hip flexors don't fatigue as quickly. When we hit a downhill during a race, I was just watching the Nutty Comb cross country race from Madison, and we had our girl on the mic commentating,
Mm-hmm.
and she said something along the lines of, and now they're hitting the downhills, and all they're trying to do here is just regenerate a little bit. Don't push it too hard. Relax, get ready for the next climb. And I thought, and that's the difference between trail racing and cross country racing, is people would be looking to push that downhill.
Mm-hmm.
So now you get to a road race after being used to revving the downhill, and now you get to coast the downhills at a more aggressive pace than other people are able to in a road race. And you realize, oh, I have an advantage here that I never had. So I think it rounds out all the weaknesses of the stereotypical runner. That would be bullet point number one.
Mm-hmm. That's probably the biggest thing when you really think about it.
Yeah. You don't break down as much.
And you know what else? It was scary. It was like, I got to go above and beyond to be prepared for this because I don't know what's going to happen to me. And this is like so demanding that like fear is a great motivator for me. I think it is for most people. And I was afraid of failing. So that would be the equivalent of being ready for the marathon. Like I'm so afraid of failing at my half that I'm going to train for a marathon and be so overconfident that when I race the half, it's going to be a pro. I'm going to train like a marathoner and then just race the half. Okay, well, of course, you're going to be ready. And I think OCR made me so uncomfortable initially. And so, like, I don't know what I'm going to do 3 hours on the mountain after all this happened at Lake Tahoe. Like, I am going to fear is going to motivate me to do it all and train my best. And I think there was part of it to that too. Whereas, like, a lot of these things, excuse me, that we've chased for years, and OCR doesn't really scare me anymore. Not as much, anyways. And for those of you who've been road warriors since you were 22 and you've been at this for 15 years, like where's the intimidation factor? Well, if you're not afraid of it anymore, what does that do to your training? Maybe it doesn't ensure you're extra bulletproofed, right? And so there's that fear component that people don't talk about a lot that I think is a big part of this.
That's a really good point, because in running, what is the only thing that people are truly like really, really worried about of any road race? I think it's the wall in the marathon.
Yep.
Outside of that, it's like, yeah, 5K is going to hurt. A mile's gone, it's going to hurt. But no one talks about any one component of the race like, oh, this could go really bad, other than the wall in the marathon, because that grinds you to a halt.
Mm-hmm.
OCR is full of those things. Double sandbag carries, 2,000-foot power hiking climbs, treacherous descents, rigs, obstacles that you can fail, and then you're just ground to a halt. You can't do anything. And all the way people prepare for the wall in the marathon is the way people prepare for like 5 or 6 different facets of obstacle course racing. And I think that's a really good point, that the unknown and the fear factor made you train more well-rounded than simply like, oh, I hope I don't get dropped in this 5K.
Yeah. I also think it can work the opposite way, meaning like, let's say you're a 50 marathons in 50 states person, right? And you've been on 20 or 30 of them, which I see a lot of this going on, which is cool. I think it's fantastic to have a focus like that. But then it's like, okay, so now I've done this for so long. I've been chasing marathons for so long. But like, if I had to go on the track and race a mile right now, that scares the shit out of me, right? And so you could almost argue the opposite then, being like, you're so comfortable in your long grindy stuff. Like, what if we had you ripping quarters at X pace or doing 200s or something crazy? What would that do to your fitness? The fear factor, getting you ready to be more efficient at marathon pacing. I don't know, but I think it works better the other way. Like I'm scared of the longer unknown grindy side of OCR than it does whittling it down to short races. But fear's good. Instilling fear in a race you're approaching for, I feel like generally raises all fitness ships.
But Kirk, I would say my biggest bullet point for why obstacle course racing, in particular, the Spartan race circuit that we pursued for years, why that put us in our best overall shape is because it required so many facets of running in order to be competitive. It was more than just trail racing. For example, one year at the Illinois Super, my watch beeped as we finished going through the hurdle walls after already having done the over under through. And this is not the smoothest terrain, but it was pretty flat.
Mm-hmm.
And it beeped at 5:26 for the first mile. And we had gone over a wall, crawled under a wall, clambered through a wall, and then gone over what they call the hurdles, which is 3 or 4 like 5-foot high walls to go over.
Mm-hmm.
So we had been interrupted at our cadence 6 times, one of which required our knees basically to hit the ground and roll over. And we were at 5:26 through the mile, which means what pace were we probably running? Between
5:05,
5:10 and
5:10.
5:15.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the
5:10.
slowest 5. So that's fast enough running that we had to be ready to do that. And I remember thinking, that's pretty quick, and feeling relatively comfortable. You're never comfortable running that pace with those rhythm breakers, but thinking, okay. And so you have to be, again, that's why you had to be able to run sub 16 to be competitive at all, and closer to 15 if you wanted to be really good, because you had to be able to run 5:0 under duress to start a race at least. It didn't stay at that pace the whole time, but you needed to have that in your tool bag. And then you would get out in, let's say, California or Texas or Tahoe, places like that, and you might have 2 to 3 miles straight with no obstacles at some point,
Mm-hmm.
60 minutes into a race. And now you've got to have the endurance of a half marathon runner, or you've got to be able to clip into, for us at the time, 5:20 to 5:40 pace, an hour in with a lot of engine dings along the way,
Terrain.
and now just run 5:20 to 5:30 on terrain for 3 straight miles in the middle of the race. So you had to have that in your repertoire, but you needed to be able to handle a 30-minute uphill climb, but you also needed to be able to bomb down that. I think Rylan Shadig, when Jack Bauer was rabbiting him in Canada, famously went like 4:44 on a downhill mile down the mountain
I believe
in
it.
the middle of a 13-mile race on
Mm-hmm.
semi-technical to technical terrain, sub 450. So you have to have that in your repertoire. So the training that's required to be able to touch 5:0 pace comfortably under duress, 5:20 an hour into a race, sub 450 down a mountain technical, and then grind uphill for 30 minutes and put that all into a package, requires you to touch every system known to runners.
Mm-hmm.
And it requires you to have no weak points. So I think just the overall demands of the courses required us to be good at everything. And as a result, you could race everything.
And we could have done this entire conversation without uttering OCR.
Correct.
And that's not what this conversation is about, but I agree with you wholeheartedly about that. And I don't even know why we head this direction. It's not like we're not trying to convince anybody to do OCR or hybrid. That's a pure runner. Both you and I have shied away from OCR based on, I'd say, more politics and the opportunity reasons, right? They've faltered. But I think if the overarching theme to it is like, if you've been stuck, rattle the cage a little bit. And if you're just questioning training decisions, revolve back to that 60-minute half marathon type pacing fitness. And I think the last thing on it is just like, we've done a whole episode on it, but durability, like when in doubt, choose the longer race distance pacing or the longer interval session or the less sexy, drawn out version of things. And most likely that should make you more available to race all distances. I think it's as simple as that. I do think that chasing something new and novel, if you've been pursuing the same things for years, like, hey, I'm going to try a Decafit or a High Rocks this winter if you're a pure runner, might actually improve your running. You might be surprised what it does for you when you work on those tertiary components of your fitness. But I think centerpiece, what was the point of this? Let's tell people to go race or train at 60-minute race pace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
So I'm going to give the OCR inspired template for being your best, well-rounded, ready-to-race endurance runner.
All right, then we wrap.
In my opinion.
Okay, great.
All right, this is going to be 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
2 out of every 3 workouts center around 1 hour race pace, plus minus 20, let's call it, minutes. and that can change throughout the year. But center around 60-minute race pace for 2 out of every 3 workouts. The third, use to be ready for the fastest and longest demands that any race on your schedule will give you. And do roughly 50% of your work on the terrain that matters most, and the other 50% of your work on the other terrains that you will hit that year. And there it is. That's your template for being ready to race everything you could ever want to race.
And what the heck, at best in OCR, you're reduced to your half marathon pace at best, or effort anyways, after the hit of the carries and the obstacles. So I couldn't agree more. I mean, heck, you could run a 35-minute race and be reduced to marathon pace because the demands of what's in between all of it is so high. So yes, and yes, and yes.
You have anything you want to wrap with?
Yeah, I just want feedback on, like, do you guys want a shitload of Q&As from us so we get through all the questions because you like listening to them? Or do you prefer them to be spread out? Just like a quick 1-sentence slide into our DMs and let us know. Because right now, like I said, I got 20 screenshots stacked and they just keep piling up. And so it's like, do we just hit these every couple of weeks? We do a Q&A because it's fun to cover new topics and people like them, or do we not? And I just want some feedback on that. That's how I want to close this. It's just a call to action, because it weighs heavy on my mind. That folder stacking up always does.
It does. And I know that about you, but we are the wrong people to make this decision, because from my perspective as a co-host to this, whenever Rich is like, what do you have on the podcast this week? I'm like, Q&A. Goes, I love pulling out the old Q&A when you don't have anything. And it's like this funny joke. Yeah. But at the same time, we love doing the Q&A episode. So we like doing it, and it doesn't require planning. So that seems like it feels as if it could be a cop-out. And yet when I go watch other videos or podcasts, I generally tune into the Q&A rapid fire versions, because that's when I find pieces that I'm interested in. So from a viewer standpoint, I think I'd like it. From a host standpoint, I like doing it, but I'm worried that it seems like, oh, they don't have content again. So we do want to know your real thoughts on it, so we know how to proceed.
We have plenty of content. That's not the problem. We have endless topics we can do for our Training Tuesdays.
Never.
And you're right. I listen to the Outdoor Space podcast often. When I see Q&A, I'll click on that over other ones because I know they're going to keep me interested with a bunch of different topics and make me think about things that weren't on my radar. So anyways, that's all. I think we should wrap. Thanks for listening.
See you Friday.
See you Friday, guys. Thanks.